So we were visiting our global missions partner, and no one's ever gone. Like, no staff member has ever gone. So we've been partners for 15 years.
Whoa.
And he comes over once a year. But other than there's a Seacoaster who's helped to start that relationship between Seacoast and our partner in Pakistan, and he runs a nonprofit that we support him through, and so he goes all the time. But in terms of a Seacoast staff, like official Seacoast, there was Taliban controlling the country at a point, so it wasn't super safe. I think if he's telling me to do it, I don't balance safety at all.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, and I think you may have asked me this, like, would I go back? I'm like, if he tells me to go back, I'm going to go back. Because it's the same with Paul, right? Like, they prophesied to Paul, if you go to Rome, you're going to die. And right before he leaves to go to Rome, they're crying because they know that they're not going to see him again. And he knows he's going to die if he goes to Rome. But just because it's not safe doesn't mean God didn't tell him to do it. And so, at the end of the day, you're right. It's like, if God tells you to do it, it doesn't matter whether it's safe or not. He's told you to do it. And you're not supposed to love your life so much that you wouldn't give it up.
Yep.
So
we've got someone coming from the Global Water Center. It's a fascinating topic to me and a heartbreaking topic to me that there's whole gigantic organizations that their sole purpose is to get clean water to people. Like, it's like that fact right there just stops me dead in my tracks, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
I went into a camp, Joey, never seen anything like this. I'm from Spartanburg, South Carolina, small town, and there were probably 5,000-6,000 people lying on the ground dying from when you have no water, you have no food. I mean, dying. And it radically shifted my world, my life, my understanding of faith. We're working with governments, as I gave you in India was an example. And we've just been given an opportunity to begin to work on a regional plan for all of East Africa. The goal is to work with Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, and really using standards and a common approach, give that region of the world the ability to support and encourage one another at governmental levels and NGO levels. So we're primarily here to serve, and I don't know if I emphasize that enough, but it's at a pretty big scale, honestly.
We train them how to cut, how to measure, how to sew, everything that they need to know about leather and about making leather. Like I said, we're all about empowerment. So what we do is we train these women, and they have choices. They can continue with Carry 117, working for us, or they can go somewhere else and work for somebody, or they can start their own thing. We include life skills. We teach them how to save. We train them how to cut, how to measure, how to sew, everything that they need to know about leather and about making leather.
How much would one of these bags sell in like a high dollar shop downtown Charleston in New York City or something like that?
Actually, we've had leather experts tell us that our leather quality would sell, it's equivalent to the Hunt brand leather, which our bag, which we sell for about $300, would sell for $1,500.
Oh, $1,200 savings on a bag.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Just because I don't believe or agree doesn't mean I can't learn from you.
Why did you have to bring that up?
Okay, that one I'm super embarrassed about.
Do you like me?
Do I like you?
Yeah.
As an individual or as a podcast?
Just as a person.
No, I like you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I don't have any interest in appearing to be stronger than I am.
I ain't bow to Nebuchadnezzar's statue. He gonna lead. You feel me?
How do we love people who see the world differently than we do?
What would it look like if we truly loved all of our neighbors? Could listening to their stories be the first step? This is Seacoast Church, and there's way more to talk about.
What's up, podcast listeners? Thanks for joining us. 1 John 3:17 says, "But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. Today's episode is special. There's 3 completely different conversations, all 3 introducing you to people and organizations who not only believe and tell others about the gospel in word, they are also trying to live it with their lives in deed and in truth. From a host conversation, although a very lighthearted time as usual when we get together, Lynne talks about her recent Seacoast Missions trip to Pakistan. Then we'll introduce you to 2 other organizations who are laboring out of love for their fellow man. Can't wait for you to listen, and thank you for doing so. Lynne, you just got back from Pakistan a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I read an article where that's one of the most dangerous places to travel right now. We were podcasting with Josh Walters a few weeks ago while you were in Pakistan, and he even said something like, I think I mentioned when Lynne comes back, he's like, yeah, if she comes back, like, was it pretty intense? Like the safety aspect of your trip, like, was it pretty intense?
It was intense. I didn't,
And what were y'all there for?
We were visiting our global missions partner, and no one's ever gone. Like, no staff member has ever gone. So we've been partners for 15 years.
Whoa.
And he comes over once a year. But other than, there's a Seacoaster who's helped to start that relationship between Seacoast and our partner in Pakistan. And he runs a nonprofit that we support him through. And so he goes all the time. But in terms of a Seacoast staff, like official Seacoast, no one had ever gone to visit. Now, a large portion of that time, the Taliban, there was Taliban controlling the country at a point. So it wasn't super safe. It was, so going there, before we went, and Pastor Mac from our Johns Island campus, he went. And so before we were at our group chat, he was like, are we going to have security? And I read that and I was like, security? It didn't, like, I feel like I had a healthy, reverence for what we were about to do, because we had talked through, there's going to be a Quran in our hotel room. You don't touch it. Like, they don't put anything on top of it. It's offensive. It's against the law to blaspheme the Quran, and it's punishable by death to be carried out by anyone.
So they can't touch it? It's not intended to be read?
No, they can touch it, but they have certain rules on how you place it, how you handle it. So for us being in a hotel room, they're like, just don't touch it, because we don't want there to be any cause for accusation or anything like that. So going into it, I had a very healthy reverence for, this is serious. We're going into a different country. But when he asked about security, I was like, I don't know if we're having security. And so Jody's like, she reached out, and our missions partner was like, yeah, we'll have security. So I'm like, okay, we have security. We have a security team at Mount Pleasant, I'm like, okay, that's fine. The first time we left the hotel, though, I'm sitting in the back seat, and there were 6 of us on the team. So we had 3 different cars, and there were 2 teammates per car and a security guy in each car. And so the first time we and going into the hotel, everything in a third world country, it's behind a wall. They have a guy with a machine gun at the top. You coming in, a dog is sniffing the car. Then you go in through another level where you're like walking through you have to put your bags on the X-ray machine. So it's a little more heightened. I didn't experience that in Togo. But the hotel was super nice. So we're leaving the next day, our first day out, and he just gets in the front seat, just casually puts the magazine in, puts one in the chamber, and literally just puts the gun right there under his leg. And we just pull out, and I was like, oh. And so and we would get out, and he would get out first and come open my car door, and he's holding it. And so there were areas they always, were always walking with us. So it was interesting getting used to someone holding it. But all of the schools and the churches have to have security.
So you didn't go with risk in mind personally.
I did. I knew. But I didn't. It wasn't as heightened as I was like, oh, he's just not even concealed weapon, just deterrent to know we're packing and this is the deal.
And did it change things for you, mentally or emotionally, the vibe?
Not until we were going into an area where even Jody and I were in the car together that time. And there's something that, and when you go to other countries, because we're used to the atmosphere we're in, I think some of the spiritual strongholds and stuff we don't pick up on. But when you go to another country, you start to feel things you don't feel in America. And so we started going into this area and I just felt uncomfortable. And I looked at Jody and it was a point where we didn't have to be covered, but we both felt like we were like whispering, we felt like we wanted to be covered, like going into this area. And we kind of got to a busy section where the cars had to slow down and he took the gun out.
No.
And I don't think anybody else saw because I'm like sitting diagonal. I can see him and he just had it down in the ready position at the floor. And until we got through that area, he was just holding it ready.
Jeez.
And so it was at that point where I was like, all right, I'm ready to go home. Yeah. So, but they took good care of us. It was amazing. I mean, it was an amazing experience, but there were a couple of times where I was like, and just being a woman in that country and the way people look at you because we weren't covered like them, the like disdain in their eyes when they look at you like that. Jody and I were so uncomfortable. Women aren't unaccompanied. And so even when so a couple times we would get down to the restaurant and the hotel earlier than the guys. And one time I like got there and the guy who like runs the restaurant kept coming up. Are they coming? Where all the men in the restaurant are staring at you when you're by yourself. Wow. If me and Jody would laugh out loud, the whole restaurant would turn around and look at us. So it's just like stuff like that. Yeah. Like when we landed in Miami, it was just like, I have never been so thankful to live in this country. Yeah. Like, wow. It was just it was wild.
So I probed a little bit with you the other day to kind of get a feel for this. Where's the disdain coming from? The fact that you're American, the fact that you're Christian, or the fact that you are revealing skin and that's disgusting? Like, do they look at you as like a prostitute? Like she must be promiscuous?
I'm not in their head, so I don't know. Sure. I think it's more of like the way that we're dressed, and they know that we're not. They know that we're not Muslim because of the way that we're dressed. Even the men and the women selling themselves on the street were dressed differently than we were dressed. Wow. And so it's not. So I do think it's the level of the way we're dressed. If you're Muslim in that country, you're covered. Your head's covered. The degree to which you're covered depends on what sect of Islam that your family is a part of. But it's obvious that we're Westerners. It's obvious that, and I don't, like, you travel to other countries, like in Pakistan, there are not white people. You stand out, and so like going with a team of like 5 white people, like you're from the West, they know you're from the West. Even the Christians in that country, the Christian women, they don't necessarily have their scarves, but they may not necessarily be wearing them on their heads. And so Christians stand out in their culture. And so I think it's a lot. I don't think it's, I don't know if it's just one thing, but I do think it's like, the women are not speaking, they're accompanied, and we're with men that we're not married to, like that are not a part of our family. And that's just not something they do culturally. So I think it's a combination of those things. Yeah.
I'm curious I wasn't even going to go in this direction, but how do you guys balance the tension, in Lynn's case, physically, because you actually traveled to Pakistan, but just like, how do y'all process the balance as we're called as Christians to spread the good news, to serve our brothers and sisters all over the world, and yet in America, we're over obsessed with safety? I know Seacoast cares about the safety of people that they send on trips, but like from a Christian perspective, how much should safety be weighed? So if somebody came to you and said, Lynne, God is doing some great work and we feel like he's continuing it. It's more dangerous in Pakistan, but we're leaving in a month. Come on, we need you. Like, how would you balance the concept of safety and God's purpose for your life?
I think if he's telling me to do it, I don't balance safety at all.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, and I think you may have asked me this, like, would I go back? I'm like, if he tells me to go back, I'm going to go back. Because it's the same with Paul, right? Like, they prophesied to Paul, if you go to Rome, you're going to die. And right before he leaves to go to Rome, they're crying because they know that they're not going to see him again. And he knows he's going to die if he goes to Rome. But just because it's not safe doesn't mean God didn't tell him to do it. And so, at the end of the day, you're right. It's like if God tells you to do it, it doesn't matter whether it's safe or not. He's told you to do it, and you're not supposed to love your life so much that you wouldn't give it up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. How do y'all feel, Roy? I
second that.
You can't really go wrong with seconding Lynn on the podcast. So if that's y'all want to default to, I second Lynn. That's fine.
No, I mean, when we're in Honduras in a prison of 300 actual killers, like there ain't nothing safe about that.
Yeah.
If at any point they want to kill me, they're going to kill me.
Yeah.
But at least God knows that I'm willing to literally give him my all.
Yeah.
Even if my all is my life. Now, listening to her tell that story, I'm just like, what the world?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, T. Lynn wins on this one.
Yeah, like, and don't get it twisted. When we're there, it's people with M18s and all the things, but Josue never had to carry a gun when we were going anywhere. Like, I at no point outside of being in the prison with like legit murderers outnumbered, whatever it is, 150 to 1, did I feel like I wasn't in control of a situation. Like, I could fight off whatever most people. But that, nah.
No. No. What are you thinking?
That's a whole other level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on a mission trip. I think it was Haiti, but I remember. Never mind. I'm not going to go down. That gets a little violent there. All right. So.
Okay.
Joey self-filtered.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
There you go. Nobody wants to hear all that.
Joey.
All right. So I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and if I remember correctly, I know for sure you were like, sign me up for that conversation. I want to say you were T also, but it's something that so what I'm about to bring up, I do it. Like, I know that I do it. I hear it all the time. I see it all the time. We're talking with close friends at Seacoast. And here's what happens is if you are caught driving or wearing or traveling to any place, owning anything that costs a good bit of money, I have noticed something that I do and a lot of my coworkers here at church is you give a little bit of an explanation as to why you were able to travel, why you own, why you have this nice thing. So along the lines of, hey, I really like that jacket, man. That's sweet. Oh, man, thanks. Yeah, I have a real rich uncle for Christmas. He gave me this, man. Usually I wouldn't buy something like this for myself. Like that sort of explanation. I've heard it with cars. I've heard it with areas where I live, trips that I've taken. And so I thought of a scenario. We'll pick on the rich uncle. But so let's say all four of us we have a rich uncle who says, I'm giving you, 4 individual scenarios, but your rich uncle says, I'm giving you a BMW, and we're talking 2024, all bells and whistles. It looks flashy. It looks awesome. First of all, we would all accept that gift, right, rich uncle?
100.
All right. Would you feel the need to explain to people when you get out of the car in the church parking lot, you're getting out of, you were just telling me about a car, you're in the market for car shopping, how expensive they are. How much would a souped up BMW? I really don't know.
Probably depends on the model. If you're talking like a 5, let's say a 7 Series, because that's a full size, like bigger sedan, it'd probably be about 65.
65. All right, so you're getting out of your car.
I mean, it ain't a Wagoneer or anything.
No, it ain't a Wagoneer. It's not that.
Do y'all feel the need to explain?
Do I feel the need to? It depends on who the conversation is, who it's with. So, like, anybody who's coming to the Dream Center that knows me, that knows that we're trying our best to be good stewards of what God has given us, like, I can be like, yeah, my uncle gave me this. Look at the license plate. It says blessed, because that's exactly what I would put on the front.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's somebody new, especially to Seacoast, then I'm going to explain it, because I don't want them to think that we, the church, are not being good stewards of what they're given.
So you feel there's a responsibility there when it comes to making sure people know, hey, here's the real deal scenario behind the scenes. I don't just, Seacoast, they ain't paying me $400,000 a year so I can afford something like this. An explanation is merited.
I don't feel like it has to be. I just know the reason why I would do it.
I mean, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. In fact, I'll just go on the record and say I would much prefer to trade it in for a much less flashy car, so I wouldn't have to tell every person that I get out of, hey, here's how I got this car. I would want a less flashier car. I'm having a feeling you're going to have a more radical viewpoint on. It's not of anybody's business how you got this car.
Well, number one, I find myself doing it sometimes too.
Yeah. I love that shirt, by the way. That really looks nice.
But I have wrestled with. Thank you, Joey.
Yeah.
But I've wrestled with this. Yeah, I've been in ministry my entire career, and I've wrestled with that. And I've come.
You like nice cars.
I do, and I've come to a place where, nice cars. I drive a truck. I mean, it ain't a BMW, but it's a very nice truck. I drive pretty trucks. And number one, I like the way they fit me. I've tried driving small cars. I'm a big guy. It just doesn't work. All right.
Praise God. So
I like driving a big truck. And but that said, I spend a lot of time in my truck. I spend a lot of time in the car. Two places I spend a lot of time: home and in my car. And I like those places to be places of comfort and peace for me. And so
worth the money, worth paying for it.
So yeah. And so I have come to perfectly be okay that people might think things, say things, whatever. Because at the end of the day, I know how I've gotten to where I've gotten. I believe this wholeheartedly. So when you said that, when you brought this subject up, and is like, here's the deal. We teach this principle here at Seacoast, and it's a principle I live by. I believe it wholeheartedly. Is that blessing follows obedience. Okay. Now that doesn't mean everybody's rich. It doesn't mean everybody gets everything they want. But what it means is we got to deal with that. There is a blessing in being obedient to Christ and doing things His way.
But it may not have anything to do with finances. I have to say that.
It may not. It may not. But I have done the best. I'm not perfect, but but my life has been defined by making decisions that are obedient to Christ. And I don't want to go. I don't want to go through all because sometimes it can feel like, as if I'm saying I'm better than others. That's not the case. The fact is it's available to everybody. I just simply believe when we do things God's way, it works out for our good. And we've done the best we can to do things God's way in every way, starting with, as a teenager, when teenagers my age were making other choices, I wasn't making those choices. I was doing the best I could to follow Jesus.
Me too, baby. At the same high
school.
Come
on, man. Come on.
We could have used each other, but you're too busy picking on me.
Shut up.
We could have been in a small group together, but you're too busy with the cheerleaders and the football players being popular. Lynn, I don't even want to hear this anymore. Will you please stop?
Oh, my word.
Wow. Sound like a little J.I. beef right there.
No, that makes. I mean, I'll say I'm pretty sure, and I'm speaking for them. This is my words. I'm pretty sure it's something Pastor Greg has been conscious of all of his years through Seacoast as far as how things come across. I don't know how much he gets paid, but I've heard from people who do that he is one of the lowest paid mega church founders. Rick Warren, reverse tithes. I mean, the dude, 10% of what he brought into Purpose-Driven Life is millions, but the fact that he gives 90% and still lives in the same house that he lived in when he launched that book that's insane. And I feel like we have a bit of a responsibility for sure to make sure it's communicated. Where are you at with all this?
Yeah, I can see the tension of the explanation. And I think some of it too depends on your level of influence, because as a campus pastor at a dream center, when somebody walks in, people are there, they may not reach out to
it's a dream center and he flies down in a personal jet.
Right.
But they may not reach out to the finance department to get the annual report to see how we steward our money, so their view of it is what they're seeing. That may not be what's true. And there's so much to look at, but I do think that there is prudence in not creating barriers for people to engage with the Lord. And especially in a time where people, mega churches always have a target on their back, and there have been some instances where things have gone south. And so when you're whatever God's giving you to steward, I think that you don't make your life revolve around what other people might think, but there is some prudence in what you would do. So, but I think my last before my car now, my last 2 cars were given to me, and so even like part of me sharing that story wasn't like I wouldn't be driving this car otherwise, but it was like, this is what the Lord did. And so I think some of that, a lot of what our pastors get, a lot of what happens is someone in the church who owns a business or has something or gives something or, and it's a story of God's faithfulness.
The house that I live in, which is a beautiful house, we're blessed to be able to build 4 years ago, but it's only possible because of a blessing from the person that built the house for us. And so yeah, I mean, like, again, but even that,
I'm sorry, Roy, if I were in your shoes, and this is a flaw, everybody that walked into my house, for the most part, I would feel like I would want everybody to know, and I'd want to work it into conversation. Like, and I haven't been to your newest house, but I'd be like, here's how I got this house. Want to make sure, and I don't think that's healthy. But then at the same time, I'm like, there's good motivation there, Yeah. But
I'll just say this. Let me just say one. We all make decisions. Mm-hmm. We all make decisions, and there are consequences and positive and negative to all of our decisions. And we just, like Angie and I, have made certain decisions that have led to the place where we're at in terms of even just the lifestyle that we live. We in a day and age where a lot of moms want to stay home and raise kids and homeschool kids. We made a decision that Angie was going to work full time, and she works a professional job with a master's degree where she gets paid a decent income herself. And so we're 2 adults that have experience in our fields, and we make a decent living. Yep. And we've chosen to do that. Right. So I would just say this: everybody, you got to live with the choices you make, and that's not good or bad. It's just saying, like, if the choice for you, for certain families, is for one person to stay home, then that comes with a level of living, and that's the choice you make. And that's great. We've just made other choices. And therefore, we've been able to enjoy things. And again, all along, honoring God and to the best of our ability in everything we do. Yeah. Tithing has always been a part of our life. Mm-hmm. Again, I believe blessing follows obedience in that area. And so we started tithing. We've been married 27 years. We've been tithing for 26 of those 27 years. And so anyway, I don't apologize necessarily because I know that we're honoring God, and I mean we're living the way we do, even with honoring God in our finances.
Yeah. In general, so we're not talking about anybody specifically. So the in general mega church pastor, super successful. Do you think, as a general rule of thumb, it would be unwise for him or her to own and live in an extravagant, gigantic mansion, personal jet, 10 to 15 cars? Like, I'm making up numbers here, but these pastors exist. Would you say, general rule of thumb, not wise? Or would you say, how dare you? An extravagant mansion, 15 cars, and a private jet? How dare you? Or what, just kind of like...
I wouldn't say how dare you. And that's, again, and this is the other side of the coin, is that as the body, we've got to stop thinking we know the story.
Yeah. Yep.
Because we're training our people to judge what they see without knowing. And so off the cuff, I don't know how many, and I don't know examples, but I know a family who owns a really nice house. They're not pastors, but they own a really nice house. They were successful in their business. They were obedient to God. The God blessed their business. And they wanted their house to be a place where people could come. So they are retired. It's just the two of them, but they have a nice house, but they're always having people over, having retreats in their home, having family in their home. And so their house has actually become a blessing for other people. And so off the cuff, to just say you have a really big, what I think is extravagant house. I don't know how much money you're making. I don't know if you made that from your church or from a book or from a side business or from family money. We just don't know. A jet seems crazy, but if you travel a lot, there are some pastors who are traveling. So I don't know how you use it. I don't know what your heart was in getting it. And so I think at the end of the day, we might look at something and be like, that gives me pause, but I can't say how dare you, because I don't know your heart. I don't know how you use it. I don't know if some of this stuff is actually for kingdom benefit or if it's just for you. And so at the end of the day, you're going to stand in judgment. And I don't want to be a part of I'm going to stand in judgment for what I say about you. And so it's just, and who I'm going to influence because I'm saying, how dare you? So
are you saying that maybe only God sees the heart?
Wow. There might be something in scripture about that.
I mean, the other thing with that is like, it don't matter. If I'm sitting here looking at Lynne and all of the things that she has, I'm omitting all the blessings God's given me. Like, I can't live in the moment and appreciate my blessing when I'm jealous about or judging her on hers.
Yeah, there was a megachurch pastor, and talk about charisma and how he dealt with the pushback. I think it's kind of funny personally, because I do think this particular person is an extravagant example. But there's a megachurch pastor, and he was getting flack for raising money within his church for a personal jet, and so he dealt with it on a Sunday morning. He said, "People pushing back about me raising money for a jet. Well, let me tell you this: if a space shuttle will help me spread the gospel to people in other planets who are needing the gospel, then I'll raise money for a space shuttle." It's like, my gosh, dude.
That's something.
I think we can all agree. There's a line.
Yeah.
And it's just unwise. Going back to your thing, it's just unwise. Not sinful necessarily. I mean, listen, if you've made that money honestly and you've got that money to spend, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. But in our positions, there's certainly a wise. At some point there's a wise line.
Yeah.
And we can sit here and say there's some obvious examples. We know what it obviously looks like, but let's just say there's just a gray area in the middle, and everybody's opinion of what that line is. Again, my home to somebody living in Mount Pleasant is just normal. Like, nobody in Mount Pleasant would bat an eye at the home, but my home in another setting may be whatever. It's not. I mean, again, I can't. It's funny what you say, Joey. Is I know the story behind my house. I know how much my house cost to build. I can't go out right now and buy a home in Somerville, comparable for anywhere close to what I paid to build my house. Now, my house is worth way more than I actually built it for. And so it appears on the surface as a big extravagant thing, but I know what it cost to build it. And at the end of the day, it wasn't any more than what I could go out and buy a house for.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you guys for having a conversation with me. Do y'all have fun? Was it fun, T?
Always
on a scale of 1 to 10? No. All right. Well, we've got someone. I was looking at my notes, and I don't think I'm supposed to know at this point who specifically the person is, but we've got someone coming from the Global Water Center. It's a fascinating topic to me and a heartbreaking topic to me that there's whole gigantic organizations that their sole purpose is to get clean water to people. Like, it's like that fact right there just stops me dead in my tracks. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the podcast. I always love taking an opportunity to use the podcast to get word out about opportunities where people can pitch in and help out and contribute as far as meeting some major needs in this world. I'm happy to be a part of Seacoast because we do a lot of that. But man, I'm really intrigued by the topic of water, the thought that there's millions of people that don't have access to clean water is it's kind of mind-boggling. But real quick, so you've already caught on to the fact that I'm from the South with all these yes sirs and everything. So apologize if that makes you feel old, but you just told me you're from McClellanville, which for listeners that aren't familiar with the Charleston area, what's that, like 30 miles out of Charleston, 40, something like that?
Yeah, no, 30 is about right, just up the coast. A little fishing village. Actually, the last significant working commercial waterfront in the state.
Wow! And how long have you been in McClellanville?
About 18 years.
18 years. Okay, so you were not there during Hugo. Lucky man. Where'd you grow up?
No, I was actually downtown Charleston during Hugo.
Oh man!
8 feet of water. Yeah.
Man, that was something. So you were you on the peninsula during the whole thing?
Yeah, what happens when you're young. A buddy of mine and I decided we sent our families away and said, we're going to ride this one out. And it was an experience that I won't soon forget, obviously. But yeah. It was good.
Yeah. Check this out. So my uncle, who's since passed away, rest in peace, Uncle Vic, but he stayed in Charleston on James Island during Hugo. And he literally told me that he was in his living room on his hands and knees begging God to spare his life. That's how scary it was. Like he said, it was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it was a trip. I was on Broad Street in a friend's house, and during the eye of the storm, we walked out and we shone a big spotlight down the street. And he said, "What is that?" I said, "That's an oak tree coming towards us." This was the storm surge.
Whoa!
And by the time we got back in his house and to the second floor, his whole first floor was flooded with water.
Oh my gosh. What an experience. Yeah, we evacuated to St. George, so we escaped any sort of potential water danger, but I was in the 7th grade, and it's funny, but it was so terrifying that for at least a year and a half, 2 years, anytime the wind would pick up, just in general, it would kind of trigger a little bit of a fear response because it was just so scary. So how did you, what's your background and professionally, and how did you get to be a CEO of this nonprofit that we're going to be talking about, Global Water Center?
Yeah, that's a big term. I feel like I'm more like a water boy at this point as opposed to a CEO. But yeah, I'll give you a thumbnail. I love experience. So my life has been filled with different experiences. Professionally, I came out of college with a Bachelor of Science in Forestry. I went to Northern Virginia, started a young life club for a bit. Then I went and worked in forestry with Union Camp Corporation. I decided there had to be a better way to make a living than dealing with snakes and ticks and cruising timber. So I went to law school talking about snakes. And so I went to law school and I ended up practicing law here in Charleston for a season. And over time, I developed an environmental law practice. It's a fairly large firm downtown. Took a brief leave of absence when I came up for partner, and my family and I moved to Haiti. I'd always wanted to really serve in a kind of a radical way. And we sold what we had and moved to Haiti. And then the firm was kind enough to take us back after about a year and a half in Haiti. At some point, Joey, after that, this call that I just have always sensed to really be about working with people on the margins, spiritually, physically, economically, took me to seminary. And then, because I love to start things, I became a church planner for the next 30 years.
Dang.
I planted 2 churches. Personally, coached about 45 churches. Eventually, the Anglican Church would make me a bishop. And the last 18 years, I was out Porsche's Bluff Road in Mount Pleasant at a church called St. Peter's Church that we founded. 5 of us started a little Bible study and it's thriving. And so back around, this is more information you want to know, but this will get you to the Global Water Center.
Yeah, I love it.
While I was an environmental lawyer, I worked with a firm called General Engineering Laboratories, still here. but it was then owned by a fellow by the name of George Green. And he and his wife were running that. We'd become friends. I took him on his first mission trip ever. Saw him put his first pump in. George and I were talking after I stepped out of day-to-day leadership at St. Peter's. And he asked me and invited me to come help him start what we're going to be talking about today, the Global Water Center. And I said, I don't believe in retirement, and dealing with a problem that's about 2 billion people globally seems about the right fit for my retirement. So I've stepped into leadership there.
I love it. I love it, man.
That's a thumbnail of my professional development.
Yeah. Well, let's just dive right in. There's so many places to go, but I'm curious. So a little background. I mean, just kind of a side note, but something that I'm proud of, just as far as my connection with my church fam here at Seacoast. If I remember correctly, when I was on staff at our location in West Ashley, Water Missions International was just beginning their operations, and I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure we were able to give them space for their operations for years for free, and I'm that's why I love being a part of a church that's so generous. But how many organizations are doing things at the level Global Water Center is doing them? Like, would Water Missions, for example, be do y'all see those guys as peers that are up to the same thing, doing the same sort of work? But explain to me how many guys are out there doing things at your level.
Yeah. First of all, the relationship with Water Mission is absolutely unique. They're like our mother. They're the mothership.
Nice. Okay.
George and Molly started Water Mission in roughly 2000 because there really was not any organization doing what we do. They started us. Water Mission implements water points and water systems, and they do that in a remarkable way all over the world. As you know, Seacoast has been a great partner with them. But what we do is we don't implement anything.
Okay.
But we equip leaders, we equip organizations from governments to NGOs, and really begin to help the water sector deal with a long-term problem that's kind of a block, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, from them delivering safe water to the millions and actually billions that lack access to it.
Yeah.
So, we're really close. In terms of what we do, very few organizations out there are doing what we're doing. And that's, we saw a need, and we said, Lord, help us meet this need. And we've stepped into it.
Dang. And you guys started in 2020, right?
That's correct. Okay. What did I say? 2000?
No. I don't even know if you said it. I'm just, this is for me to kind of gather some information and everything. All right. So let's take some steps back and pretend that I'm new to this earth, and I'm like, oh, okay, y'all all need water, right? Well, this looks like there's a lot of water on this planet. Seems like there's enough for everybody. You mean to tell me that there's people dying by lack of? Is it lack of water or lack of clean water? I'm pretty sure it's just lack of clean water, because we got water. We got enough water, right?
We have a lot of water. A small percentage of the overall water on the world is actually water that you could drink.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it salty.
Yeah, that ocean water is pretty salty and nasty, right?
Yeah, you just wouldn't want to be drinking on that unless it to it. So I think where we start with that is that, people are dying. If you're asking, are they dying from thirst? Yeah, sometimes. I mean, water is essential for life, but really what they're dying from is on a couple levels. One would be dehydration. It's another way of saying I'm thirsty, right? You're dehydrated to the point of death. I mean, over 1 million people, for instance, a year die from basically diarrhea, which is a big piece of the whole dehydration process. I mean,
and that's because of the dirty water that they're drinking. They have tons of diarrhea and then they're dehydrated.
Yeah, but sometimes it's lack of water.
Okay.
I mean, my first exposure to all of this, and I like to tell the story because it connects to the Low Country, was back in 1985. I was a lawyer. I had an opportunity to do advance work for this thing called the Charleston Flight of Mercy. It's probably before you were born, Joey, but it'd be worth taking a look at.
Yeah.
And it's in 85, and this comes out of the church.
Whoa, did you say 1985?
Yes.
You think that's before I was born?
I don't know. I can't see you that well.
Nice, man. I take it as a compliment. I was born in 77. Proceed.
Okay. Well,
I'll take those 8 years, man.
You were 8 years old. So what happens is, at that point, I was going to a church downtown called St. Philip's, and there was this horrible famine in Ethiopia that was driven by drought. And we're seeing more and more of this all over the world, just the climate change. I'm not getting into politics of climate change, but climate is changing. Patterns of rain. So there's this horrible drought. And the church pitched a vision that the city of Charleston on Easter morning, and this is a story that probably not many people know, that the first flight out of our airport, what we call the new airport, because it used to be a brick building on the other side of the runway, would be a gift from the people of Charleston to the people of Ethiopia. And on Easter morning in 1985, a 747 loaded with goods that would be followed by a container ship took off to Ethiopia. And I did the advance work, and I went into a camp, Joey, never seen anything like this. I'm from Spartanburg, South Carolina, small town. And there were probably 5,000-6,000 people lying on the ground dying from when you have no water, you have no food. I mean, dying. And it radically shifted my world, my life, my understanding of faith, capacity to do something. And to see this town come around was such a big deal that the PBS, South Carolina PBS, did a 30-minute television program on what happened in Charleston. And so anytime you go to the airport, think about the very first flight out of that airport was a gift from the city of Charleston to the people of Ethiopia because they were in need and they didn't have water.
Man. And when we think about lack of, basic necessities that people need, and with what you've encountered in your work in developing countries, is there ever an element of, I guess, corruption in the government that makes things harder for people to actually get what they need? Like, do you feel like your efforts are also almost like in opposition of governments around the world that are making things hard? Is that a really silly question?
No, that's a keen sense of the obvious. There's always a challenge, but you and I know we live in a world that is broken. It's upside down. It's jacked up. People are focused on themselves and not the needs of others. So I guess the way we approach that is it actually comes out of, for me, just because my whole understanding of leadership is rooted in Scripture, is Matthew 10, when Jesus sends his disciples out really for the first time into the world, Joey, and he says, listen, here's the gig. Freely you have received. Now I want you to freely give. And I want you to go into these towns. And when you go into these towns, I don't want you to look for people who are just like you. I don't want you to look for people who are kind of, in line with your views. I want you to look for people of peace. Peace. And when you find a person of peace, that means I've already gone before you. I've prepared the way. You work with them. You start there. And that's how we do, whether we're working on a governmental level in a water ministry or with an NGO or with a community. We pray that God would show us that this is an opportunity because there would be a person of peace, a leader with influence that we believe we can work with. And as Jesus told his disciples, and if you find one, stay there, work with them. And if that's not the case, then shake the dust off your feet, move on, because there's other things to do. So that's kind of at a real basic level how we approach that issue. We're looking for people of peace, and they're there.
Yeah. And when you find a person of peace, let's talk about what the process is. That you find a person of peace that you want to work with. What's like the next steps?
Well, I think the first step in anything that we do is that you have to understand what the need is. it's not the same all over the world. I mean, some people get water in one way. Other people have a different kind of source. Some people have problems with corruption. Some people have problems with arsenic because the government's let another government strip mine, and there's all kinds of heavy metals in there. So you do what we always do. You build a relationship. You create some trust that you're actually there to serve. How you show up is massively important. It is for our organization. So you build trust. And then the next thing you begin to bring to the conversation is that you have to demonstrate competency, because what we're trying to do is get trust and credibility that open the door for then adoption and replication of the resources, the learning, the technical assistance that we're bringing. So we're equipping that person through relationship to then become a leader in their community, their government, wherever they are.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Man, this is awesome. Like, what would you say is besides partnerships, what's the biggest need for you guys right now? Manpower when it comes to getting done what y'all need to get done, or finances? Does one lead the line in what your most significant need is these days?
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to have a chance to talk just across what we do and how we deliver, but we're a startup and have gotten enormous favor, again, because we're working in some of the, we call it the rural water sector, which are those most under-resourced, underserved places on the planet, where about 70% of the 2.2 billion people that don't have access to safely managed water live. And we picked that intentionally, not just because of the need, but because they're under-resourced and underserved. And the moment I say that, you can already see that you're going to have a number of problems. One, you don't have the skilled technicians or the professional folks to do the work in those areas because their education systems have never been set up. You don't have the resources, which involve finances. I mean, these are at scale. I mean, we're working on projects that are touching millions, like this one project in India that we're working with the government on there. They're trying to bring water in the next 24 months to 21 million people who do not have access to safe water. Wow. So we have partners. We have to find partners. Sometimes they're private individuals. Sometimes they're foundations. Sometimes they're basically quasi-government organizations that help bring finances. And in a startup, Joey, which you've probably experienced in some of the stuff you've done, we are always one step, just a little bit behind in having the resources, human resources needed to deliver everything. We're doing it. Love it. It's a challenge. But so it is money. It is people. But there is always, from my perspective, and certainly the culture of our organization, God's favor and provision. And so you go, you step out, and it comes together.
Did you cross a line in any way as far as, hey, you're in a new season? Like I could see when I hit retirement age, I definitely want to pull back a little bit, but I think maybe, how many kids did you have kids? Did you raise kids? Two. So I would imagine, here's what it's going to look like for me, but I'm curious because you're further down the road than me. But it seems like when the kids are out of the house, that automatically opens up so much free time to where maybe I wouldn't want to cut back on my work because I think about, I do want there to be some sort of a shift when I'm older, maybe less of a taxing lifestyle, but I think that may just automatically happen when I don't have minors in the house because that's just so much. Did you kind of experience that? Because you talked about how you don't believe in retirement, but do you want to have a little bit more of a restful lifestyle as you're older? Like how do you navigate that a little bit further down the road than me?
Yeah. Well, having been a pastor of a church for most of my life, there's never a lack of people in your life. Even when your children move out, there's plenty of folks to be connected to. Absolutely. I mean, part of what's going to happen is your body's going to say something about the pace of your life. Yeah. I mean, honestly,
it's already doing that. Dadgummit.
I know. So that you can think what you want to think and plan to do what you want to do, but there are going to be just these limitations. And so you have to work in a very different way. And for me, as I've gotten older, I think I've learned to understand the gifts that I have and the opportunities I have before me. So they're much more focused and not as broad brushed as they were in my youth.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you. I kind of took us off track a little bit to get some free mentoring there. So I appreciate that for sure. It's funny because I joke around with my kids as far as the sorts of things that I have to take out of my life. And so during the pandemic, a family member bought us a trampoline, and I was jumping on it as a 40-some-year-old, and my knee bent backwards, and I took that off the list of things that I can do in my life. So that was my last time ever on a trampoline. So yeah, my body is definitely cluing me in. Hey, as we wrap this conversation up, I feel like maybe we didn't get in enough as far as the obstacles that you are up against and the main roadblocks. But give us some insight with some of your main challenges, what you're up against, and kind of what it looks like on a day-to-day operation standpoint, as far as how you guys are trying to combat these struggles and challenges.
Yeah, internally, what you and I know is that we can't externally do anything that we don't live into internally. You can't give away what you don't have. You can't lead where you haven't been and you're not willing to go. So for me, we have an organization that is global. There is no home office. We have staff over 14 time zones. And one of the biggest challenges for me is creating a cohesive culture of really gifted people. But we're all moving in the same direction. And how we care with one another, how we build trust, how we build relationship, how we collaborate, which are our core values externally, we live internally. Because all structures tell a story. So that is my main focus, that we really are generous, encouragers, super collaborative leadership team. So I would say, as a CEO, that's my main focus. Mm-hmm. I have brilliant people. They're all over the world. People who actually believe that they can help change the world, and that's why I love working with them. And from there, if the team is working together and believes in what we're doing, the obstacles aren't really that big of an obstacle. We'll work through them.
Man, this has been great. I applaud you for showing us how it's done when you are at a retirement age. You are, for lack of better words, kicking butt, taking names, and I appreciate just being able to have you on here, get word out. If someone, we'll leave in the show notes links and any sort of information that people would need, and I would imagine there's probably places for people to serve with their time and energy, as well as financial needs that people could help contribute to.
Yeah, there are. And one of the things that I would mention is we're always looking for advocates, and we're always looking for people to help us raise awareness. Most of us don't think much about the delivery of safe water, because for over 100 years, it's just been happening, like in your house. And we just don't think about it. Funding, absolutely. We'll talk about probably have talked about some of our educational work. You could fund a student who's being trained in some aspect of delivering safe water. And then I think the last thing you can do is that you can write me at info@globalwatercenter.org, and we will respond to your particular interest and your particular desire to help.
Yeah. Yeah, close us out with telling people a little bit about that mentoring component that you mentioned.
Which mentoring component is that?
As far as and maybe I misheard you, but I thought you said something in regards to partnering with someone, but I could have heard you wrong.
No, I mean, my whole worldview and our whole worldview is around mentoring. It's about an ongoing learning process. everything we do is not based on just delivering knowledge. Let me give you a PowerPoint. Let me give you a book. No, that doesn't work. What we're driving towards is application, that knowledge finding wisdom. Well, what wisdom is basically is to having the skills to navigate life. And what we're trying to do is deliver the skills to navigate the delivery of safe water in whatever context. So not only do we train, but we're trying to do this on a global scale. We're having an ongoing learning journey with all alumni who go through any of our courses. And we're talking about lots of people. Mm-hmm. We've just created an AI bot that goes with every course that we have that will be always available to the people that take the course around that specific course information. We're creating cohorts. We create follow-up micro learnings that we share with alumni. So the whole mentoring piece is critical. I'd love to talk to you sometime about that. You've mentioned it twice. I think there's two aspects to mentoring in all our lives, and maybe one day you and I can do a deep dive on that because that's part of the real passion of my life.
Yeah. Tell us those two aspects. Can you tease us a little bit?
Yeah, I can. I think all of us need champions. Those are people we'll probably never hang out with, but they really resonate when we hear a podcast or read a book or something, and they just kind of lift us to another level of creativity and imagination when it comes to whatever we're focused on. But practically, all of us need pace setters. And this is where you have to get involved in your own mentoring. You need to identify someone that you respect, that is a little bit ahead of you in whatever it is that you're doing professionally. And you need to go to them and in humility and say, I'd like to learn from you. Would you meet with me for a coffee once every few weeks? And let's just talk about whatever it is that you're wanting to develop. And anybody who's really passionate about what they're doing, I've never heard anyone say, no, I won't meet with you.
Yeah.
You got to have a pace setter, but a pace setter is just that. It's like in a race. They just drive you to go to the next level.
Right.
This person won't be with you for the whole time, but you'll move on and find another pace setter and another pace setter. But you have to ask for it, and you need one in every season of life.
Yeah.
All my pace setters now are in their 30s and 40s because I don't want to lose touch with the people that I'm leading and the people that I hope we're impacting. We're trying to create a movement, Joey, that is about leadership. Because without leadership, nothing happens. And the truth is that in the water sector, there's a report that right now, to keep just water running at any reasonable sense of things that are already in place, it would take 750,000 skilled technicians that do not exist in the rural water sector right now. And nobody's training them. That's today. That's a point in time. And so that's, again, one of the pain points that we're going after with our training, with our technical services. I was just in Ghana, where we have worked at a governmental level and developed a vocational curriculum for the country to run through their vocational schools, where we have brought a curriculum that they're going to train. We've trained their teachers that will deliver the technical skills necessary to support their water system. And we're now doing that in many other places. We're working with governments, as I gave you in India was an example, where we're training those inside already the water sectors, engineers, other leaders, to increase their capacity, professionalization, getting resources. So we have an inside and an outside. And we've just been given an opportunity to begin to work on a regional plan for all of East Africa. The goal is to work with Ethiopia, Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, and really using standards and a common approach, give that region of the world the ability to support and encourage one another at governmental levels and NGO levels. So we're primarily here to serve, and I don't know if I emphasize that enough, but it's at a pretty big scale, honestly.
Yeah.
It is going to be fun. I'm pretty excited.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
Thank you.
For sure.
We're honored to be part of this.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'm gonna play a little game with myself and see if I can pronounce your first name correctly. Is it Henoch?
It's Henoch. Like
Henoch.
Henoch. Yes.
So like with a stress on the second syllable. Henok.
Henok. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
What's your last name?
That is perfect. Burhanu.
I'm not going to try that one. Hey, I'll tell you what. I'll try that one if you try my last name. So say your last name again.
Burhanu. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Do you see my last name on the screen anywhere? I bet you don't.
Is it? Hold on. Is it? Oh, here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, say that one.
See, these are tongue twisters for me. I use these a lot. Svensson?
Say it again, Henok.
Svensson.
Perfect. The D is silent. So
Svensson.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I lived in South Africa for a little bit, and it sounds like I had friends that their name sounds a little similar.
Gotcha.
So maybe, yeah.
Gotcha. Hey, for our listeners' sake, we're going to get to you here in a second, Ashley. But for our listeners' sake, Henok, how long have you been speaking English, man? Your English is wonderful.
You know, in Ethiopia, you get to learn English, starting from grade 1, but more like, basic things like, greetings and, days of the week and months. But I would say me living in South Africa for about 4 years, because that's where I did my high school. I think it kind of helped me polish my English. Plus, I've been a translator, a mission trip coordinator, and worked. I own my guest house back in Ethiopia, where I host adoptive families and missionaries. So I think that really helped me a lot, because every day, I'm talking to Ash on the phone. I'm working with a lot of Americans. So I think that helped me polish my English.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I'm very good.
He's good.
I'm enough to communicate.
Yeah.
If you talk to me more, you would understand that I miss some, idiomatic terms, and because I believe language is also about culture. We always brag, like, with our guest house, we always say we have good translators that not only translate language but culture as well. So yeah.
I'm gonna agree with Ashley on this one, and I tuned out any humility on your part as far as your English speaking skills. You're A+, man, for that being your second language. Holy cow!
Yeah, it is. His is great, and he doesn't have a super strong accent, so it's easy for people to understand him.
Yeah, and also just Ashley, I could imagine when you met him, like just reading a little bit of y'all's background and then seeing the video that you guys did with Lynne at the Chosen Conference at Seacoast, I can see why when you met him and heard what he was up to, you were like, let me into this. So, I mean, because it's just golly. And did it feel, and I don't want to make any assumptions, so please excuse the question. And if it's, but are you, I'm assuming, do you guys both share the Christian faith?
We do.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
So did it feel almost like man, this is a match made in heaven, as far as when y'all met each other and everything just clicked, and was the Holy Spirit involved in y'all's opinion? I mean, how did that work out? And we'll get into what y'all are doing here in a second, but y'all's relationship, like, was it just amazing? Kind of like, man, God, thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. Like, we were both serving at another organization, and it was owned by a foreigner, and we were both just serving there.
Yeah.
And that's where we met on one of our first trips. And he was a translator for us. And I was just so impressed with what a great leader he was in his community. Not surprised, but just like really inspired by him. I didn't even know his story at that point. I just saw him in the trenches leading.
Henok, you a little embarrassed about us talking about you while you're just sitting there?
I'm here listening, trying to take that.
But through that experience, I learned so much about how important it is for like a national to own it and lead it, because that organization ended up getting shut down because the foreigner was making decisions about this organization across the world that would have worked in our culture, but not in his culture or in Henok's culture. And so I learned a ton about that and was really hurt actually in that process, just because like money was stolen from me, from the church that I was working at. Like, he was left with that guy's debt. Like, it's kind of a disaster.
Dang, Ashley, wow.
So it was a really good eye-opening experience for me of like, who do I trust? And it's funny because I feel like a lot of times we assume like, well, how are they really using the money over there? I'm like, well, actually it was the American who was stealing the money. Like, that was the problem, was a little bit of a mind thing for me. And then as I got to know him more, because it is such an honor shame culture in Ethiopia, like we were just friends. I mean, we are just friends. By the way, we're not like married
no, I know,
or anything.
I know.
I just wanted to clarify our relationship. Everybody assumes they're like, you guys work together. You're such good friends. Is there something else? I'm like, no, we're just friends. Like,
as I was expressing how neat of a connection, I was like, this kind of sounds romantic, and I don't mean it that way. So yes,
we always joke that we have a child together called Carrie 117. So, anyways, yes. As I learned more about his heart, as we walked through that really heartbreaking situation. And what I admired most is when he wanted to. So 89 women lost their job the day that other organization was shut down. And he was the one on the ground getting the phone calls from the women who were like, we're going back to the trash dump to eat. Our kids can't go to school. We have no food on the table. And he was like just absolutely ripped apart hearing that, because he was the one who was on the ground with those relationships, not the people across the world. And so as God was working in his heart and healing everyone who was involved, it wasn't just us. We had missionary friends who had to be evacuated out of the country because the guy got arrested when he went. It was a whole, it could be a movie.
Right.
And when he came back with his vision, we were all kind of like, if you want to keep doing this after we all just had our hearts broken and you want to be the leader of it, like, we're going to come alongside you, because the honor shame culture of Ethiopia, like, he didn't share a lot of what he had been through yet. We didn't know the personal side of why he cared so much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of like trust building for him to share a lot of that. And as he understood a lot of our culture where we just share that stuff.
Right.
And it's not honor shame culture. It's a right wrong culture. He understood more of like why people like to hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to make sure I get it correct. It's Carrie 117 or Carrie 117. How do you say it?
117. It's Isaiah 117.
Carrie 117. And let's go ahead and get the website out there too. Carrie117.com.
Yep.
All right. Carrie117.com. Henoch, was the work that you were doing similar to what Carrie 117 is now? Same sort of thing?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the vision and the mission of the organization was pretty much the same. You know, it was all about empowerment, and still our motto is orphan prevention, family preservation through women empowerment. So the same idea.
No. Say that again. That is strong, man.
It's orphan prevention, family preservation through women empowerment.
Gosh,
and that's what
I love that.
Is all about. So yes, it's a similar vision and mission.
All right. Well, then, since it's similar, let's camp out on Carrie 117. Tell people exactly what it is, as if they are hearing about it for the first time.
So Carrie 117 is an organization, like I said, that's all about orphan prevention, family preservation through women empowerment. And we do this by training women on how to make beautiful leather bags. Now, why did we choose leather? Because Ethiopia has the best leather in the world. And a fun fact, Ethiopia, Italy, and France, and Europe actually in general gets 90% of their leather from Ethiopia. So that's why we're interested in doing leather. So what we do is
all right, real quick. Here's how ignorant I am. Is leather from cowhide?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I mean it can be from any animal, cowhide, goat hide. Some people use other types.
Gotcha. So the leather is really good because of how it's made from the animal. It doesn't have anything to do with like the animals being special. It's just how it's made in Ethiopia.
Well, actually, both.
Okay.
Yeah. Ethiopia is one of the largest livestock populations in the world, and because of the elevation, like Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, is 76,000 feet above sea level. So because of the elevation, the way that the hides, form.
It has a lot to do with the weather. So we're right around the equator, so the weather is good for leather. So the high elevation, and it has a lot to do the tropical climate that exists there makes the leather very good.
And because the cows don't graze in like fences, there's not like a lot of like blemishes on the hides. So they don't like rub up against the fence and like get scars on the leather. So the leather is super like high end. And also the leather we use is full grain. So there are 5 grades of leather, which means every grade of leather basically shaves down a level of the hide and then either paints it or treats it. Full grain means the hair is removed and it goes directly into the tanning process. There is no shaving or sanding down of the hide. So the original hide is intact, which means it's the most durable, strongest leather that you can get.
Dang, okay.
And we have many experts tell us it's the kind of leather you put in your will.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow.
So it's the best leather, and it's this is how high as it gets, or as quality as it gets.
Would you guys have a guess? I'd almost be certain that y'all have figured this out, especially Ashley with where you're from. How much would one of these bags sell in like a high dollar shop downtown Charleston in New York City or something like that?
Actually, we've had leather experts in Australia, California, and Atlanta tell us that our leather quality would sell, it's equivalent to the Hunt brand leather, which our bag, which we sell for about $300, would sell for $1,500.
Oh, $1,200 savings on a bag.
Yeah.
Gosh. That's awesome. Yeah. And when you started, was it with one woman, or did you start with a handful, or how'd that happen?
Yeah, so great question. So like we just talked about, when the previous organization closed, there was more than 79 women working for that. Which when I thought about starting an organization, which was hard because I was just a salary paid person there. Who earned $70 to $80 a month. And, there's no way that I could start an organization. So I knew I had to start somewhere, not with all the 79 women, but somewhere. So yes, we reached out to my amazing friends here and said, I still believe in the mission and I still think that we could do a good job, with carrying out this vision. But I knew that I just had to start small. So we did start with one woman and one sewing machine.
In a closet.
In a closet. So we actually had a seed money of $2,000. So we bought our sewing machine for $1,200, and then the rest of it went to our rent. So we actually had no future income or no money on hand left. We just stepped out in faith, and we're like, if God wants this to happen, it will happen, and we're just going to be obedient to what He has installed in our hearts, and we just went with it. So fast forward, currently 89 women have went through our program.
89. You said went through your program. So does that mean that they are self-sufficient, not an official connection with you guys right now? Like y'all basically taught them to fish, sort of analogy. Mm-hmm. That may be an analogy.
Like I said, we're all about empowerment. So what we do is we train these women, and they have choices. They can continue with Carry 117, working for us, or they can go somewhere else and work for somebody, or they can start their own thing.
And you train, when you say train, specifically with the leather work, or are you talking life skills in general, or specifically the craft?
Yeah, so we like to call it a holistic training. So we train them. So sometimes when the women come into our program, there are some women who don't even know how to hold a scissor. So that's how basic it goes. And we include life skills. We teach them how to save. That's, as specific as our training is. We train them how to cut, how to measure, how to sew, everything that they need to know about leather and about making leather. And
working, teamwork, showing up on time, communication, all of that.
And so everything, yeah. So they do take those trainings as well.
And there are spiritual components as well. So it is, it's just like legally, we call them meetings.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Y'all, I was on the way to the podcast studio today. I was thinking about, because I'm talking with you two, and then earlier today I talked to a CEO of a nonprofit who's trying to empower other organizations to help with the global clean water crisis. And it just occurred to me, we, at least Hinnock in America, I think we lament as Christians a lot when we look around and see just how true it is that the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil, with greed and just people becoming way richer than they need to be, and just the economic disparity and all of that. And we talk about that side of it, but it's like there's also people who it's not about the money. It is about giving, and there's tons. Like it kind of stinks that we look at the negativity, but then we don't hold open space for marveling at people like you guys who are, I mean, Ashley, on the American side of things, I think it's noteworthy to say that you don't make any money from this. And Knock, what I would like to ask you is, this is tied directly to personal experience for you. You are helping women, and in your eyes, I'm imagining that you are seeing your mother and a lot of them and their life experiences. What was your upbringing like? Am I remembering your story correctly, that a lot of the inspiration of what you're doing is from your experience growing up with a single mom?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, she's the source of all this, and why.
What's her name?
Yetim. So her full name is Yetim Work.
Yetim.
But she goes by the name Yetim. So she has everything to do with this. So I know you've heard my story, but just to recap that, I grew up with a single mom. My mom actually was 16 years old when she had me.
16
so
when she had
16 year old. I mean, to this day, like this, it's just unimaginable. Like, think of a 16-year-old that and having a baby, and having to raise that baby by herself. So my mom was 16 when she had me. She came from an arranged marriage from North. She escaped from an arranged marriage from North Ethiopia, came to the city and had me. So imagine. So the city is big. I mean, currently it has 12 million people in it. So it's a huge city. So for a 16-year-old little girl, basically, to come to the city that she has no idea of, uneducated, doesn't know what to do at all. You can imagine how hard life would be for her and for her little boy back then. We kind of went through what a typical 16-year-old single mom in Ethiopia would go through, meaning there are times where you were not sure, where the next food on the table comes from. You were not sure about whether you're going to be in a house or not tomorrow. So we kind of went through each and all of those phases of life, and was pretty hard. And like you said, I got my inspiration from her. And fast forward now, my mom is a pretty strong business person. She owns like 2 boutiques where she sells clothing, and she owns an apartment building, and she's an example to every woman in our society, in our neighborhood, and in our village. And that's why, because I really believed that it's because my mom had an opportunity that she was able to do this. And for most women in Ethiopia, it's not because they can't do it. It's not because they don't want to. It's because they don't have the opportunity. If they have the opportunity, they can run with that opportunity and make it. I'm seeing it with my mom. I'm seeing it with the women at Carry 117, that we gave them an opportunity for empowerment, and they're making these world-class, beautiful bags that people go wow when they see them. So it is it is from her. This drive to empower women is from her, and it's because I've seen her do it. I've seen women be empowered and do it.
Yeah. Was your upbringing fairly common for children? And I don't know if you would rather not get into the territory as to why your mom wanted to get away from what was being arranged, but what is single mothers fairly common in Ethiopia?
I love Ethiopia. I always believe there's a reason that I was born in Ethiopia, and God put me there for a reason. And I love my people. I love my culture, and I love the history behind Ethiopia. But the one thing that I don't admire is when women are suppressed in Ethiopia. For example, a man could have a baby with a woman and not have an accountability. He could just leave and nobody would hold the man accountable. There are over 6 million orphans in Ethiopia. The stats say that there's 6 million orphans in Ethiopia, and it's not necessarily because they lose both their parents. It's mostly most of them have a parent living. It's because the dad leaves most of the time. It's because the mom is left to provide for her kids. And because she can't do that, because she doesn't have an opportunity, because she did not get any education, the kid goes out to feed for himself or for herself. So it is a fairly common. There's plenty of people in my society and my circle that have been raised by just their moms. So I would say it's a very common practice, or it's a common thing in Ethiopia, and it's a common reality.
I'm curious. I want to throw this in there, kind of a background question. I think as parents in America, sometimes we can, or I'll pick on myself. Sometimes I can think to myself, man, I wish I could provide, this for my kids. Like, and we're talking, all of it would be in the category of extra, not needs. Like, needs are taken care of, but there are certain things that certain lavishness that we will go without that maybe our kids would see peers have, those sorts of things. I want to ask you, when you were living in such poverty, did that affect the level of your peace and joy and happiness? Like, did it affect your mind? Or at that age, is there just like a resilience, and it's like, as long as I'm with my mom, I'm okay? And feel free to ask for clarification if.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And you let me know if I'm answering your questions right. But I would say yes and no. At that, and again, this is because of what I went through is why I started Carry 117. Because I was, or my mom, we were both in fear of, what comes next, where are we going next? What's happening tomorrow? Because like I said, she was not educated. She does not have any source of income. If it wasn't, for God, and if it wasn't for the people around us, we would not have been here. So yes, there's always a fear. It kind of gives you a security that you are with a person that loves you and that would give their life for you. Yes, absolutely. I was very secured and very happy that I am with my mom. But I would definitely say there's also that part where you kind of live in fear, absolutely not knowing what is going to happen tomorrow.
Ashley, tell me some of the American side of things. Like, I really don't know a whole lot about y'all's operations. Is this strictly mail order? Are some of these bags in stores? Or tell me a little bit about the operational side of things.
Yeah, so there's several different things. We have an online store, carry117.com. So we have that, and then we partner with many boutiques around the country who carry our leather line, and then we do like pop-ups.
Yep.
So just like we did at the Chosen Women's Conference at Seacoast, so events like that. And then we do wholesale custom orders for like some businesses who maybe want to give their clients a gift for Christmas, or a conference that's happening and they're going to provide a bag for everyone. So we basically, partner with organizations who are really trying to support social enterprises who are doing good in the world, and trying to double their impact, not just in their community, but in the world. And so we're in a lot of places. We're fully volunteer run. We have volunteers across several states. So that's been really cool because, although we bring teams and trips over to meet the women and see the workshop and meet the kids, I love that we're able to provide them with a way to stay involved. So it's more about a partnership mindset than a trip mindset. And so we have, some student ministries involved and women's ministries involved. And families who serve together, from our accounting to our inventory, to our shipping, to our pop-ups. We're always looking to add to that. But it's been an honor. It's been sharpening for my faith as somebody who is a typical American girl and grew up in America in the middle class, not wondering where my meals were coming next, not worrying about not having a place to stay. I mean, we couldn't come from more different backgrounds in that way. But one of the most beautiful things I think about our friendship is, even though that is so different, we are so alike in so many ways. It just looks different. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned is we're all poor. It just looks really different. When you walk into another culture, it's easier to name their poverty than to name your own. And so honestly, my friendship with Hanok has helped me see some of my own poverty of relationships, poverty of even the need for God sometimes, which is really sad to say, but I don't have to pray to God to provide my next meal. I can go in my refrigerator or go drive in my car to the grocery store to get the food with the money that I earned in my other job. You know what I mean? I don't have to worry about that. And so I feel like there have been so many conversations we've had together where it's been so sharpening for my faith. And I'm so grateful because even though a lot of people might look at Ethiopia and think, well, there are a lot of people who are hungry, or you don't have a lot of money in a lot of situations there. I'm like, well, we might have money or material things, but we really struggle with relationships or with dependence on God. And I think
that's good insight.
Yeah, I think it's been really good for me, and I'm grateful, and I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing. So,
yeah, that's cool. Hey, so I'll tell you, Hanok, that when I was a kid, Ethiopia was the country talked about the most in America. I'm talking around third grade right now. That was the country that, in my head, I think it was when I was introduced to poverty and I saw the footage of hungry kids, starving, those horrible images, and there were songs produced, to benefit here in America and all over the world. But I would love to know, and here's what's neat about this conversation is the family, the most important family, we're all in it. We're in the kingdom of God. So a secondary family that we're in is our country. So I want to give you permission, Hanok, to give us here in America some stereotypes that you guys in Ethiopia think about Americans, and you are loved. You're not going to get in trouble. We want to hear the truth, man. What do you think about Americans up in this place?
I love that you said that. It was funny. I was actually looking at the lyrics of this song. I forgot what it was called.
Feed the World.
Yes.
Feed the World. And man, that was a tough song to hear. And I'm just going to point out to you why it was tough.
This is so interesting. I grew up with this song, and they still play this song every holiday.
It's just so and please, before I say anything, I come from an honor and shame culture where honoring people is a huge thing. So I'm not saying any of this to offend people or any sort of like that.
Sure.
But there was one line that said, "Thank God that it's not you and that it's them." And I was like, "Ooh, that hurts."
Yeah, exactly. I'll say, and tonight, thank God it's them instead of you. And I'm pretty sure it's Bono from U2. What's up with that, man?
Well, that was hard. I mean, we were like, I can't believe he said that. But and be on the other side that you're thankful that it's not you, that it's us, or when like those. That was just tough to hear. And where it said, tell them about Christmas or something like that. They don't know Christmas in Africa.
Do they know it's Christmas time at all?
I'm like, Ethiopia is a country worth of 3,000 years, and historically, if you look at Ethiopia accepted Christianity thousands of years ago, and the people, Ethiopia is a predominantly Christian country, and you bet that they know about Christ and Jesus way before any Americans did, So
like y'all are very, very smart
we
people.
know about Christianity and Jesus, and we celebrate Christmas. It just looks different, and I don't believe Christmas is about things or things that we have and we don't have, and the gifts, and I understand why that culture exists, but I don't think it's about that, and it should be about that. So I just believe that there was this starvation that happened in the late 80s. That was a huge thing, and that happened, but that's not what Ethiopia is all about. Ethiopia has a beautiful culture, beautiful place, and you can say something into this because she's been there 18 times, and when you go to the northern Ethiopia, there's so much history attached with the country, and so, 84 biblical history. There's 84 tribes, 84 languages, 84 beautiful cultures. Ethiopia is the only country that has its own alphabets in Africa. Ethiopia is a country that uses a different calendar. Ethiopia is a country that has 13 months of sunshine, and there's just so much to Ethiopia than those two songs say that it is. And I just encourage people to find out and know more about Ethiopia than just the lack of access to food or money or things like that.
I will say, I think the heart behind that song was written obviously for Americans to be grateful for what they have. Obviously, at the time that it was written, maybe they weren't thinking that maybe somebody from Ethiopia will hear this song and maybe be punched in the stomach listening to the lyrics a little bit, So
which is a great lesson on cultural sensitivity, because there was no ill intent. Obviously, the purpose was to raise money. But there is a cultural disconnect, and obviously, in retrospect, it would have probably been very wise for whoever was heading up this song creation to talk to some folks in Ethiopia and say, and clear it with you guys. I know that sounds silly, but I think that would make a whole lot of sense. Hey, we're wanting to move people's hearts. Is this okay with how we are presenting this? It would have probably solved a lot of that stuff.
And the truth is they weren't wrong for saying there are people hungry in Ethiopia. Especially at that, there are right now, there are people hungry in the US too, but I'm like, that might be true, but that's not the whole story. And I think for a long time in America, that's the story we've heard, because it's hard to relate to life in a different way when all you know is your culture. And so when you're raising awareness for an injustice, like there are kids who are starving, and that's a great thing to raise awareness about, you know? So the heart is a beautiful thing. But I always try to translate it. What does that look like for us? Like, that's like, even the way we post on social media about an injustice, we always think, like, what we've learned through the years is the women of Carry 117 and their kids will probably see these posts one day. So are the words we're using, the pictures we're using, dignifying? Is there anything in that would make them feel ashamed
if
they saw it or they read it? Or would it make them feel like, well, that's not my whole story? Like, that's only one part of a much bigger story.
And culturally, Hinak would probably have a really good sense for a picture that would be embarrassing to a woman that maybe, Ashley, you would probably know now with your experience, but maybe I wouldn't pick up on. I'd look at a picture and be like, oh, that's great. Hinak would be like, whoa, you can't post that because of such and such,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we work very, great with our U.S. team and with our Ethiopian team. They would always send, the caption to me and say, is this okay? Is this okay if it was looked at in the eyes of your culture? And, I always have to approve, that post. And we work greatly in that aspect.
Yeah.
We've definitely made a lot of mistakes in it. And still to this day, I've been 18 times serving there for 14 years, and I'm still learning so much, which I'm so grateful for, because it's definitely showed me, like, there's a difference between what's biblical and what's cultural, and what does it look like to serve a God of all nations. And that's totally expanded like how I even see God, and I'm really grateful for that. And Yeah, I think, again, Ethiopia is a beautiful country. It was the only African country that was never colonized, which is why the culture is so rich. And I think that, they're known for their delicious coffee and their amazing leather and their beautiful, welcoming hospitality and really, really beautiful people. And so I'm so grateful to know more than just maybe the snapshot of what we've been told.
Yeah.
And one thing I also think I've learned is like, we would see these pictures of kids and they looked so sad. And we always laugh about this, but for some reason in our culture, it's normal to smile when somebody's taking your picture. And it is not like smiling. It's like, I don't know. I don't know why they look so mad sometimes taking a picture, but it's just culturally, you don't necessarily smile when you take a picture. Right. So I'm like, are they trying to make the kids look sad? Like, what kid is always sad? I'm like, or is this just like how you take a picture? You just look at the camera, you don't smile. So like that, even that alone was like, we laugh about this all the time. I'm like, okay, can you take a picture of whatever? But can you tell them to smile for us so that we don't like look at them and think, well, wow, they look miserable with work.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's perspective because those are the pictures we've seen.
Totally.
That's definitely perspective. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Hey, so you guys are aware that Americans celebrate Christmas December the 25th. Check. Are y'all aware or do you think, how aware do you think Ethiopians are in general of poverty in America? Do you think the assumption is kind of like, oh, Americans, they're all rich, or is there an awareness there?
Yeah. I've been a victim of that as well. So, I started traveling to America 10 years ago and I've been coming, a couple of times a year. And before I came to US, my perspective of US was all that I saw on the movies, skyscrapers and, fancy lives and,
you guys still with me?
All these glamorous, shiny lives. That's all I could think of. Everybody's rich. You can find money laying on the floor.
That'd be nice.
That's all we thought of. So I can boldly say that that's what a lot of people say. But just like Ashley said a few minutes ago, what I have learned is through my travel is that poverty looks different. It's just how you see it and where you are. Yes, Ethiopia has or is suffering from a lot of financial freedoms, of financial poverty, but there is a different type of poverty in US as well. I remember coming the first time 10 years ago, and I was walking up on an apartment building, and our neighbor went in, and my dad at that time never greeted our neighbor, and I'm like, you don't know this guy? Like, he's your neighbor? And he's like, no, I haven't really seen him. This is my first time seeing him. And I'm like, where do you get your community? Because we're so high on our relationships and that community with your neighbor and with your village and with your neighborhood. And so I just, it's been a great mind change and such a perspective that I saw on how poverty exists everywhere, but it just looks different. But yeah, people's thought about America is that it's all glamorous, rich,
That's
and
interesting.
All better opportunities and all of that. So some of it is right. There's definitely better opportunities, and there's obviously much more wealth here. But you know what? It just poverty is everywhere. It just looks different.
So let's wrap it up here. What are y'all currently most excited about with what's going on at Carry 117?
We're excited about a few things. We just celebrated we're celebrating our 10th year anniversary next month, and
nice.
We're just celebrating and being excited for what had God given us and what doors had God opened in the past 10 years. And 89 women were empowered, and the statistics say that for every one woman that you empower, you're feeding 5 mouths and daily. So 450-ish people daily, and that's what we have been doing. And Like I said at the beginning of this, we started with one woman and one sewing machine. The fact that we have done all this throughout the past 10 years, we are very thankful. We're very thankful for all involved. Every individual that bought a bag that told somebody about Carry 117, that's the one thing that we've been celebrating and being excited about. And right now, we're actually just bought our own land where we can expand and do more of what we're doing. Because right now, we're just operating out of somebody's living room. And we only have a limited space where we can train 10 women at a time and only hire a few women at a time. So we're in the process of building our own building where we can open up a Carry 117 training institute where we can train 40 women at one time, and then we're planning to train 80 women in 1 year. So 10 years we trained 89 women in 1 year. We're hoping we can train 80 women. And give them an opportunity where they can support themselves and their families through the fruits of their labor. So we're pretty excited about and trying to fundraise for our building and forever home. So those are a few things that we're excited about.
Yeah. Well, here's to God's kingdom, and we are honored just to be a tiny part of y'all's vision by getting word out. And I would imagine people, a great way of supporting y'all's efforts is to buy these killer bags. I would imagine we'll provide links and socials and all of that, but I would imagine people can contribute financially. What if somebody said, "Hey, I'd like to help out"? Is there a way to inquire needs in that area of volunteerism?
Yeah, there's you can contact us on the page if you're interested in running a pop-up for us or getting more involved in volunteering for the US side of the operation. Just reach out on the contact form. It comes right to our emails. If you're interested in donating towards the Forever Home, there's a tab on our website for that. Or not even just that. There's several needs if you're interested in that or purchasing our products.
Nice. Yeah. And Ashley, thank y'all so much. Do I see a Christmas tree back there?
Heck yeah. Well, it's a fall tree right now.
I'm loving it.
It's got a fall skirt on, see?
I love it.
And no ornaments. The ornaments come later and it changes the skirt to be a Christmas tree then.
I love it. I'm all about Christmas. I start listening to Christmas music November the 1st, so it's right around the corner.
Hey, thank you for having us. Yeah. It's not lost on us. We appreciate anyone who wants to tell our story and share it first. So thank you for sharing your platform with us. We're
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank y'all both.
You've been listening to the Things You Won't Hear on Sunday Seacoast podcast. In the show notes, you'll see a link to our Facebook group page. Also, we'd love for you to consider subscribing so you get these episodes downloaded right when they come out. Thanks so much for listening.